Welcome back to Daytime Ottawa. My next guest has an important message to share with everybody at home and to tell you about a fantastic event that can really change people's lives. I'm joined by Niha Shahzad. She's the Director of Research at the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. First of all, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the centre and the role that it plays.
For sure. So the Canadian Centre for Women's Empowerment, we're the only national nonprofit organization that's dedicated to fighting economic abuse. And we do this through following a feminist economic recovery plan and by using research and data from our studies and also lived experience from victims and survivors.
And November's a big month, right? We're talking about really two awareness campaigns, and there really is a connection. Although they're two separate campaigns, there's a connection. Tell us about these two campaigns and what that connection is.
That's right. So November is typically Women Abuse Awareness Month, National Women's Abuse Awareness Month, and National Financial Literacy Month. And at the intersection of those is economic abuse.
Right.
And so every year in November, the CCFWE runs our Help Us Rise campaign, which is a national campaign dedicated to increasing awareness about economic abuse during this time. Because really financial literacy and domestic abuse, they go hand in hand and they intersect and they make the lives of victims and survivors very, very difficult.
Now, how do you define economic abuse?
So it's defined by three components. One is called economic exploitation. So that's when an abuser takes control of a victim's finances, their salary, their credit, debit, all of those things, and basically tries to spend all of their money, steal their money, put them into an enormous amount of debt so that the victim can't leave, they can't find a house, they can't find a job. It's really debilitating for women leaving a situation.
Is it more common than we probably realize as a society?
Definitely it is. It's an understudied and not very well heard of type of abuse. So 94 to 99% of domestic abuse survivors and victims actually experience economic abuse. So that is, again, a majority of them.
Right.
And it can impact survivors and victims up to 7 years after they've even left the abuser.
In what way?
So, like I said, because abusers try to destroy their credit, they're no longer able to get housing because their credit is destroyed, and obviously mortgage and financial institutions are going to go to that. When employers do credit checks to hire somebody, they're not going to be able to pass that. On top of that, because they're left with none of their own money, they have to start from scratch, start from the bottom. And often this includes like their childcare payments, housing, transit, all of that. Most women come out with nothing. So building that up from scratch is really difficult. Building it up when your credit has been damaged by your abuser is even more difficult.
And one of the reasons why your organization is so important is because you bring that educational component. And that educational component isn't just victims and survivors, right? It goes beyond that.
That's right. So our national research study, we actually focused on 3 lines of inquiry. So we talked to financial institutions, to social service providers, so shelters, care workers, things like that, and victims and survivors as well. So we are looking to educate financial institutions and policymakers in general about the impacts of economic abuse and really the systemic barriers that are in place that are detrimental to victims and survivors.
Well, what's the conversation been like with financial institutions? Are they listening? Have you been getting any headway whatsoever?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So we actually, at our National Task Force of Economic Justice, we have a few financial institution staff, and they say that they could be the first line of defense for victims and survivors, because they often hear about these situations and they see the red flags before police get involved or before social services get involved. But what we saw, just preliminary results from our study that will be released on November 15th. But we saw that financial institutions, most staff, over 50%, want to get more training on economic abuse and financial abuse, but under 30% actually get that training.
Right. You have an important virtual event coming up. Tell us about that.
That's right. So we have, on November 15th, our first ever Economic Abuse Summit in Canada. The theme is financial resilience and what it takes to recover from domestic economic abuse. So we have a number of different components. We have a research component, so Canadian nonprofits and organizations are going to be presenting their research findings, the latest research findings on economic abuse, including us.
Right.
We have an international component, so we're going to hear about best practices for combating economic abuse from the UK and Australia and New Zealand. And we have a fireside panel with survivors and victims as well.
For someone that's watching right now and they're connecting the dots and they find themselves going through this, right?
Yes.
Economic, financial abuse. What's the first step?
Well, you can visit our website, ccfwe.org, because the first step, which we have on there, is your safety planning.
Right.
So that means without your abuser knowing, you have to get together all of your financial documents, all of your legal documents, anything that you might have, understand what financial landscape you have. Like, do you have names on joint accounts with your abuser or with your partner?
Okay.
Do you have lines of credit? Is your mortgage linked with them somehow? All of these things, you'll be able to find a checklist on our website, and you can check that off. And obviously, the first one is to reach out to any social service providers. Again, you can find that list on our website.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you provide any of that sort of social service or one-on-one?
Right now, we focus on sort of the research evidence and providing the systemic barrier, providing evidence to reduce the systemic barriers.
Right.
So in the financial, legal, and social service systems. We did used to have a peer support program that we were running, but right now we're trying to focus from the top down to try and remove those barriers from all of our systems across Canada.
We brought up the website on a few occasions here. Just want to get in quickly. Registration, do you have to register beforehand for the virtual event?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. So you can find a registration on our website as well, and it is free.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, really appreciate the time again today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.